It's time for your next favorite episode of the Integratedness Podcast with Jason and Jolene.
Welcome back to the Integratedness Podcast with Jason and Jolene. I am Jason.
I'm Jolene.
Hi, I got you while you're taking a sip of coffee.
Right?
What an asshole. Anyways, welcoming a guest this week, which is actually, it's kind of funny because, okay, so Joe, you tell your side of bringing Rick on.
Yeah, so Rick and I go years back, and I love that because this podcast will do that, and we have this like amazing series of events that the universe will always align in our lives. So Rick and I go back. I remember grade 5. He made his way over to Canada, and we have gone to school and known each other ever since. So I was aware of some changes in Rikki's life and health situation over the last while. He's also a listener who reached out a couple of years ago and was like, oh my God, I just found this podcast, Joe, and it's great. And I just thought it would be amazing to have him on here, especially since this year we are focusing on men's health. We're focusing on mental wellness. Rick also works in the field. It just seemed like the perfect fit.
Which is cool. And when you mentioned Rick, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. And then I got the name to send him the email, and I'm like, Rikki Barden? And I'm like, he was my employment counselor when the Daily News shut, 11 years ago. But I hadn't seen him since he left Open Door Group. So it's good to see Rikki again. Can I call you Rikki or Rick?
It's funny. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I think Joe and my parents are the only people that call me Rick. And it's not for me saying like, no, I want to go by Rick or Rikki. It's just that's because I say like I'm easy with either. But it seems, yeah. So again, either.
That's funny because I want to call you Rikki, but then I thought you went to Rick as you got older, but I like innately want to call you Rikki. So I'm going to keep calling you Rikki then. I won't call you Rick.
I will too, just because that's what I'm familiar with.
That's so funny.
Right? So, Rikki, tell us, share a little bit about your story here for the listeners, just to bring them up to speed.
Yeah, let's socially locate you, Rikki. He's a social worker.
Okay. I guess it starts about almost exactly a year ago. I was just having some stomach issues, which I actually went to the doctor for, and he was like, oh, you might have an ulcer, and gave me some meds, and then was like, oh, you might actually have diabetes as well. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I was golfing at one of the virtual places, and I had a really hard time. My stomach was getting worse. I came home, had something to eat. And the next morning I woke up and I was like, it was too much. And I had to come into the emergency room. And it happened really fast. So I was in there in a ton of pain. They did their test assessments. The doctor came in, basically said, you've got a giant blockage in your stomach that's causing all this problem, but it also looks like you've got cancer as well. And so spent a week here at Royal Inland getting the tumor removed that was causing the blockage. And then right after that, got into everything else. So it was never an ulcer. I did, in fact, have diabetes because the cancer that was the mass in the stomach, I guess the liver did what it was supposed to, and it sucked the nastiness of the cancer into the liver. And then, got out of the hospital. And then since then, it's been dealing with doctors who have been fantastic, treatment. And then I had another surgery back in October of this year. The thought was try and get as much cancer as they could out of the liver while I'm still young enough to handle a major surgery. So spent about a week in Kelowna. They cut me open real good. But unfortunately, there was much more in the liver than they could see through the MRIs or CTs or any of the scans. So as much as that was the hope, it didn't quite work out. And now I'm just doing sort of an ongoing monthly treatment to keep the cancer at bay.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
All of that, like so quick in the flash, like just right in front of you. So, Rick, help our listeners understand who this is happening to. You have a wife, you have a daughter. You are what, 42, 43? You just turned 43.
43.
Yeah. He's another February friend of mine. Yeah, how old's your daughter?
8.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah. So who is it affecting? It's my mom and dad who are still with us. It's my partner and my daughter. It's my coworkers. It's my friends. I mean, it's everybody in your life. I think I've been very fortunate if I think of my personal situation and the close group of friends that I have when it comes to illness, death, things like that. I haven't really experienced it. Like, as you said earlier, like I moved from England when I was like 12 years old. And so we left my entire family besides my mom and dad. And so, yeah, I had grandparents pass over there. And the longer I was away from England, the less it mentally affected me, even though I had great relationships when I was younger, they faded. And then I've had a couple of friends here whose parents have passed. And that was very sad. But again, that wasn't me. So there's always been a level of separation from anything like this. So I think this is the closest I've ever come to thinking closely about mortality and these sorts of things. And it just so happens that it is with me as opposed to a loved one or a close friend or anything. So yeah, it's made me think about things that I've never thought about before. And the scariest part is having an 8-year-old daughter. Because while things are like they're stable right now, it's just kind of like you got a time bomb in you and you don't know when things are going to start to move forward with whatever's going to happen or the disease spreads or whatever. So it's terrifying. And I think mom and dad had a really hard time dealing with it, as I'm sure any parent would. But unbelievably supportive in so many different ways the whole way through. Like they came and stayed with me. Well, not with me, but in Kelowna while I was there. They and my partner tagged out at at the hotel, the hospital. My partner obviously had our child back here, so she was back dealing with her. So I've just been incredibly supported throughout all this as well.
Yeah, your colleagues have been really supportive. Your
Yeah.
classmates, I threw it out too. So there was a GoFundMe page for Rikki and his family. All of these things I can imagine are very hard to be on the receiving end of, Rikki. Like very
So embarrassing.
no, I really want to honor that because you're like, I am not asking for these things, but I need them. My family needs them. And there just becomes this like humbling gratefulness. And I love that you use the word embarrassing because people outside of you are like, that is the last thing you should be feeling. But that is a very visceral response to these scenarios, right? All of a sudden, your personal life is also out in public, right? Those are big pieces. And one of the things that we're going to get into towards the end of this chat is what was really helpful or what areas of support, like, what did your partner need for support? What does your daughter need? And I actually am going to I'm gonna go somewhere I didn't intend to go, but in your story you said I haven't really brushed with death all that much, right? But I'm gonna challenge you there, Rikki, because this is interesting. One of your best friends in high school lost his mom. I lost my dad in grade 12. We have a lot of classmates who have left children behind. They've passed. So Tyler, Brandon, You see those people, right? It's very interesting how much this has actually occurred around you. Maybe not directly tethered to you these days, but it is very interesting to see some of those pieces. And one of our classmates has publicly shared that she, lost her dad, her brother, her husband, and now is stage 4 diagnosed cancer and leaving potentially 2 daughters behind, and reaching out to everyone saying, can you please meet us with love when you see us and know that this is what we are going through. And I cannot help but notice how much of this is slamming in the face of many of us who are interconnected right now.
Yeah. I guess with a lot of the people that you speak about, it's not people that I'm in real contact with anymore. Even like the person with his mom, like we've only just reconnected. I don't know. I get what you're saying, but again, I think it's still never been this close with like personal and family.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. I do think what's being highlighted is how we are all touched much closer than we realize we are, and you're
Yeah.
not alone. You're not alone. And I
Yeah.
think the more people can say their stories out loud, bring these to awareness, share them, let others, like, let your community support you, the more you realize, oh my gosh, so many people are navigating this. And I feel like maybe we're just talking about it more, or maybe the prevalence is higher, but I think people are dealing with these health challenges 20 years earlier than we used to.
Oh, most definitely. You're hearing a lot. I don't know, from my graduating class and the one around me, a lot of people have had cancer. Many have passed away, or there's been other health issues that have contributed to where they are. And I think it was something when we were growing up, 70s and 80s, you just didn't hear as much about. I don't think people talked about it as openly either. Everything was much more personal. You didn't share your personal dirt with anybody. So it's great, Rikki, to have you come on here to talk about it so openly. I have a question.
Yeah.
How did the diagnosis and the experience change the way that you approach life? Because some people get mad and they throw things and they blame the world and they have like a pity party that never ends. And then other people just like embrace every day, every moment. You know what I mean? And there's a renewed appreciation for everything. What sort of way have you approached it?
I think it changes. I think at first, when everything was, at first I went numb, and was just dealing with like the practical things that I could deal with or get through. And I didn't last very long, because then there were definitely like some tears and trying to figure out like, okay, how bad is this? How long do I have? What do I have to what do I have to do in preparation for not being here potentially? And then that was kind of all while I was off for the first month of getting the first little surgery done. And then I came back to work. And I'm a social worker. I work at the hospital. So I'm working with people that are getting diagnoses all the time. And I think I was quantifying is not the word, but sort of weighing what was happening with me with how bad things were for other people at the same time. I was like, well, mine's not that bad in comparison when I'm sitting here watching whoever deal with whatever. And so I just sort of would keep going. And I think that's kind of where I'm at even now. I don't dwell on it. There's nothing I can do about it. And so, yeah, sometimes I get sad and sort of have my 20 minutes or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, I've got an 8-year-old daughter. I've got a partner. I've got responsibilities. I can't afford to sit around and have a pity party. I need to keep going and doing what I need to for them. And at the same time, I think you said it as well. I'm a pretty happy person in general. I think I'm pretty positive, and I just try to maintain that. And I am starting to do like what people would call bucket list things, like things that I wouldn't typically do. Like I bought Wu-Tang tickets the other day for the final show.
Shut
So
up.
stoked. And they were a little bit expensive, and I had to get the hotel and whatever. And in the past, I'd be like, oh no, like next time. But I mean, they've got it as their final concert. I'm gonna take my 8-year-old daughter. It's gonna be interesting. Yeah, so I think I'm trying. I would usually do things where I would like save for the future or like put money aside to then go on that trip later. But now I'm thinking, okay, well, life's finite, life's precious. Let's do that thing while I can. Yeah,
I think
I don't
that's
know if that
beautiful.
was the
Yeah,
answer.
yeah.
Well, and that's very much in line. Like there's a Stoic proverb, memento mori. We did a whole episode on it, and the whole concept of it is that any of us honestly could leave life right now. Every morning when we wake up, we
Totally.
could all be dead by the end of the day, or you go to sleep and you don't wake up. And so the approach you're taking is like the approach really all of us should be doing every day. It's just interesting how we need like a really traumatic life event to remind us of that when it should be our day-to-day approach to life.
100%. And I've thought about that as well. It's just like you go through life and anything can happen at any time. There's a good chance I know how I'm going to go. And I know about it now. And I may only have who knows how long. But it's exactly the same. You're right. Like you walk out and get hit by a car tomorrow. I've thought about that a few times, actually.
Yeah. I mean, the day my dad died, we were chatting in the morning. He had a heart attack by 5 o'clock, and he was gone. Like, and that wasn't planned, and his health
Yeah.
was good. Like, it could happen to any of us, right? Could stroke out, and I could drop dead to 4 o'clock this afternoon. So it's a good thing to keep in mind to savor every moment and the people you got in it, and don't waste any time at all.
So on
Yeah.
one hand, there's an advantage to like getting the foreshadow so that you can be way more intentional than maybe your average neighbor. However, that doesn't come without its, impact of every day you have the reality of that, and the loved ones around you have that lingering as the reality more so than the average person. And I
Exactly.
really think that's important because I think that we have a hard enough time as human beings overcoming negative thoughts and negative thought patterns. That would be the ultimate app running in the background that you have to override every day. That's an exhaustion piece. That is a really difficult thing that uses up a lot of energy to be able to override, especially when you are exposed to that trauma response every single day you go into work. So it's beautiful to be able to compare yourself against what potentially might be worse. But let's say you had a job out in the community where you weren't seeing all of that tragedy around you. I wonder if the impact of your knowing of your situation then becomes more profound against the people you can compare it to. So it's both a trigger to be at the hospital, but it might also be a comparison protective factor because you can see scenarios perhaps worse than yours more frequently than if you left the hospital. Isn't it wild how all that can impact us?
Yeah.
I'm curious, Rick, what have you started doing differently, if anything, in your life? So those are like bucket list things, more intentional living. Do you tell people you love them more? Are you eating differently? Have you looked at alternative ways to be like, you know what, my body is wise and it knows what to do? And how do I holistically experience all of this? Like, is there anything that you've been inspired to do?
Hmm. I think there's a couple of things there. I think I definitely do. I'm healthier than I've ever been. And I think actually that was a bit of a kick in the teeth when I got the diagnosis to begin with, because prior to my daughter coming along, my 20s were quite unhealthy. Um, and into my mid 30s, honestly, as well. It wasn't until she came along that I quit drinking, quit doing basically everything. And it wasn't purposeful. Like it literally just happened. As much as I may have had a problem with drinking and drugs or whatever back in the day, it just ended. So for a good 8 years, I was pretty healthy. And then at the same time of getting the cancer diagnosis, I got the diabetes diagnosis as well. Like my whole endocrine system was kind of messed up. Which there's actually kind of a funny story that every time I go in to get one of these surgeries done, I kind of get a twofer. The first time they took my appendix, so that I've been talking to another doctor, and they're like, "Oh, they took the tumor and they took your appendix," and I'm like arguing with the guy. I'm like, "Nobody's told me this." And then when I got the liver done, they took my gallbladder as well. So just organs, left, right, and center. So with the diabetes, I've got to change my eating completely, on insulin in the mornings, which seems to be working just fine. So I've got to lose weight, get more exercise. And now I have more of an incentive too, as well. Like in pre-diagnosis, you're like, okay, yeah, no, it would be good to be better, good to be in better shape. It would be good to lose weight. But then the diagnosis has kind of said, okay, well, if this is going to give you like an extra couple of years with family and potentially hit like graduation of your daughter, the wedding of your daughter, whatever, then there's more of a good rationale for it. At least that's what drives me. That's really the biggest thing, I think, is just trying to take care of my health more. I've always been pretty open with my relationships, friends, family. I think ever since I got more reconnected with my parents after the terrible 20s and whatnot, I've enjoyed spending time with them. I tell them that I love them. And I think they find that strange because they grew up in a time where they wouldn't say that as much. So we'll be like, okay, end of the phone call, love you, mom. Yeah, love you too, sometimes. And I mean, I tell my daughter every day. And I think I could tell my partner more, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
As a man, really assuming responsibility for his family. I've heard that very consistently through your story, Rikki. What do you wish they had more support with?
My daughter's been very sheltered from it. She doesn't know. She knows that I've been in hospital a couple of times. She knows that I have ongoing like tummy issues. And I go to the doctors like once a month. So she is not aware of a diagnosis, because if she did, just from media we've watched, cartoons, TV, whatever, she associates cancer with death, and pretty quickly. So until she is, I don't even know how old, or until she figures it out herself, and then we'll have the conversation. She doesn't know. And she has good support. Even her daycare. They came forward when the whole, what's it called? The money thing.
Oh, the GoFundMe.
The GoFundMe. When the GoFundMe came out, her daycare came forward and said they would like to do something around there as well. And we were like, no, it's too close. And then instead of doing that, they actually cut us. I think we haven't been paying for daycare since like
Wow.
October.
Beautiful.
And now I'm back to work. They're going to start doing it again. But just you talk about community and people coming forward out of nowhere. That was
Yes.
huge.
Yes.
Um, Chrissy, or my partner, what would I wish for her for support? I mean, my parents are there for her. Her family is there for her. She's got a great work community. And she's got a great community of friends as well. I don't know what more I could wish for her. And I think I could be better at checking in with her and seeing how she's doing. Quite honestly, there's been a couple of times where I've been like, oh, this is happening to me, burr, 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 burr. And then she's been there every step of the way, insists on coming to every doctor's appointment because God forbid I don't ask the right question. um, she's been my rock. And I haven't thought about her and what she needs enough throughout this. I do, but I could be better.
Well, and I think the reality, Rikki, is that life is happening at the same time you're navigating this. Life doesn't get put on pause. You still
Yeah.
wake up early with your daughter and you still have to do the dishes and grocery shop and do all the things. And, it's actually the simple stuff I'm looking at because I know like what I crave as just a busy parent, right? And you are navigating all of this amongst all of that. And maybe it's just more slow Sunday mornings lying in bed cuddling together. Maybe it is utilizing your benefits plan. So you have an amazing benefits plan. Get that woman in for massages twice a month, whether she needs them or not. Go for acupuncture. Use up whatever you can to nourish the bodies that are carrying this journey for you. Because our bodies are storing everything. They're storing everything that we have felt, experienced, and this shows up later. And anything that isn't getting addressed now is getting saved up for later, right?
And then it's
So,
always a bitch when it shows up later,
for sure.
right?
So it's like how can each of you get nourishment during these times that like your body's needing to be strong to continue to do what it's doing? And like what does that look like? That's already available to you guys. Like those are just kind of the things that are rolling in the background because sometimes we think it's these big extravagant things, but no, it's the day to day, it's the real life. Maybe it's just a couple of extra meals so that you don't have to worry about something. Maybe it's somebody offering to take your daughter for a weekend so you guys can literally just lie in bed, have great sex, and do nothing, right? Like these are not things that happen in normal life all the time.
Yeah, they're usually the stuff that's not
Yeah.
prioritized when it should be prioritized.
So Margaret, can you take a weekend? I promise they're just gonna watch movies.
Right? But just give them
Amazing.
that time.
We're lucky, quite honestly. As I said earlier, like my parents are fantastic at taking Ripley. When we ask, like they'll pick her up for birthday parties, they'll do all those things. And Chrissy's parents as well, like they're just a little bit out of town, only an hour out. And we like spring break's coming up. We're going to use them absolutely for that. So we're very lucky to still have that option, and it's taken a load off.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So I guess, Rick, what advice would you have for people who find themselves, it doesn't even have to be something like what you're experiencing, but just when it comes to like the trials and tribulations of life, what advice would you give people how to navigate that and keep things in perspective?
What a question. I think for me, it's been relying on my community. So my family and my friends, and as much as I kind of said earlier, like it was embarrassing with the GoFundMe, I reached out to somebody who had gone through this not like 2 months prior. And I said, like, this is mortifying. Like, I don't know if I should go ahead with this. And she's like, when she got her diagnosis, did you think it was embarrassing for me? Or like, you were wanting to support to make things easier? And I was like, well, yeah, obviously. And she's like, well, duh, it's the same for you. And I needed to be told that. And so there's been a lot of times where my supports, my community have been there just to send a text, cheer me up, talk about things that aren't related to this. The distraction is huge. I mean, Joe, you said earlier about how it's kind of always there. Like I had to say to my parents at one point, like, you got to stop asking me how I am every time we see each other, because that is that trigger. And you see it in people's eyes when you haven't seen them in a while. How are you doing? Yeah, I'm good. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. And I get people are just, they're concerned. But it's hard. But at the same time, in a way, embracing that, like not the sadness, but having the people around, being open with them, not beating them over the head with what's going on all the time, because who wants to hear that as well? But if you need to talk about it, getting it out, and just doing the fun things that you've always done if you can, because there'll come a time where I can't do it anymore, probably. And so I want to be able to say, just like having a child and not wanting to have regrets about not doing X, Y, and Z later in life, I want to be able to do my things now. And so even if I'm having a shitty day or I'm in a bad mood or I am thinking about it too much, maybe I'll push myself to go and do the thing, go for the walk, go for the hike with the family, whatever it is. So force yourself to do the things you might not necessarily want to in the moment, but would regret if you look back on it a week or two, a deathbed later. Yeah, I don't think I really have advice. I think everyone's journey is going to be so different, depending on who they come with for support, their typical outlook on life, how willing they are to share experiences or whatever with other people. Unfortunately, I think I was kind of made to deal with this in one way. Just with the career I've chosen, the places that I've worked, the amount of death that I've seen through like employment. And you're right, I guess through close family and friends as well, in a way. Yeah.
That's great, Rick. That's I think that is advice right there. Everything you just said. Actually, this whole episode has been basically, hopefully, a learning tool for people, not only to navigate like trauma, but just how to approach life every day, in my opinion.
I think you nailed it when you said that your daughter associates cancer with quick death. And I think that socially, that is what we learn. We don't see anything different. And what you are offering people, and even by telling your story, going back to work, having small conversations, giving people updates when you can, you're showing them a different type of journey that we don't get to see as often. You know, I remember finding out about somebody who had lived with cancer for like 12 years. And it was like, holy shit, that didn't exist as an option in my brain. You know, you are giving alternatives to how health can be navigated, right? You know, we have lots of chronic illnesses that probably shorten our lives. Perhaps this can be looked at the same kind of way. I mean, life itself is a chronic illness.
Basically, yeah.
Like,
Well, and that's what I've had so many doctors. The very first surgeon that I had, that the old tumor out, that's exactly what he said. He's like, you know, this is how you look at it. You look at it like a chronic illness. I've had people have, and no one's ever given me a time, and I think I'm too afraid to ask, quite honestly. He's like, I've had people have years with this. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to accept that as years. And I take my medicines every day. I try to live more healthy, or live healthier, more healthy. live a better
Both work.
lifestyle,
Both work.
You know,
and take it as it comes.
yeah, and I have heard enough stories and personally worked with individuals who have prolonged and created profound shifts in their health based on even spiritual advancement of their own, right? And really recognizing the power. And a lot of people anchor into typically more positive, forward focused movement. And I think that there is a lot of evidence, there's proof in the pudding that this does change how our body can respond and be supported in those ways, right? And, you know, there are multiple different ways that you can tackle healthcare, right? And, you know, I think receiving is one of the things that us as humans have a really hard time with, especially as a male in a vulnerable position. And if there's one thing that GoFundMe page and the community around you is really encouraging is let this be a time to receive. And I actually did work with somebody who was going through treatments who had difficulty receiving. And we actually worked on the somaticization of that in terms of how can I now receive this medicine to help my body? Because if there's a lack of receiving a paycheck, maybe there's a lack of receiving chemo, there's a lack, like it becomes this exchange with the world around us, right? So all of that comes down to core worth around, am I deserving of this? Am I lovable? Am I worthy? Like things we bring from our most wounded childhood parts that end up coming out in these end stages of, you know what, let's give it a fucking shot, right? So some really cool things like that. And I would not be surprised. It sounds like you have like very much embraced some of those approaches.
You're so smart. The words that you say. Yes, I mean, I'd like to think so. It wasn't easy, but I do think I deserve good things. I do nice things for a lot of people. I'm okay with receiving support. Again, it's fucking mortifying, and you don't want to have to need it, but I know that I would do the same, if not more, for my family and friends if they need it. So I've just had to wrap my brain around it.
That I want everybody to stop for a second and notice how they felt when they heard Rikki say that. I do deserve this. I do deserve these things. That is profound. And that is what everybody needs to hear. Like that coming out of your mouth was not as easy the first couple times around. There is massive healing that occurs from that, you know? And then the other things, you look at the parts of your body, right? You're like, what does the liver represent? What do these things represent? You know, how do you make peace with how things have been stored? You know, I'm just going to tell you, Rikki, the liver from Eastern medicine approaches holds a lot of anger. So if there is anything tucked underneath that positive, jovial, kind, lovely Rikki, I encourage you to journal the shit out of those little resentments and get the fuck rid of them. Okay? Get rid of them. So
Okay, I will. I'll tuck that away.
Anger is not something that I think anybody who knows you would associate with you, which means that's a hidden little black mold somewhere. So you go find maybe some little places that anger may sit and just pass that on through.
Okay.
Boxing is really good for that.
Yeah.
Martial arts, all of it. I know this from personal experience.
Okay.
Just some unsolicited.
I will think about it. Yeah. I'm going to sit with that for a little bit.
I want to thank you so much. I know how exposing and vulnerable it is to do this. I, without a doubt, believe you are meant to share your journey. I really do believe that. I think that you have the caliber and the strength to be able to do that. And such an experience would, unfortunately, I don't want to say be wasted if kept in isolation, but I think you can sprinkle so much insight and hope into people's lives. You are creating core memories for people who are witnessing you go through this. So thank you for that. And now there are people who can associate this journey differently than perhaps it has been in the past.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see so much strength, my friend. And you know what? I'm really fucking sorry. I am sorry that you guys are navigating this.
Me too. But thank you. Yeah, thank you.
He made me cry, guys.
Yeah. Which I have not seen once on this 3 years we've been doing this. No, Rikki, thanks so much, for sharing your story with us and with the audience and everything. I too am sorry you've been going through this, but we're getting a hug. We're getting a hug. But thanks for coming on, my friend. It's been good to catch up with you again.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right.
Keep us posted. We are sending you love. We are sending you much support as you journey into your greatness. I think it's no mistake that you started listening to us before all of this. And I suspect that you started making insightful changes and awareness in your life from our fucking crazy ass wisdom.
So you're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for journeying with us.
Well, thank you. And I accept that.
Your mom's name is Margaret, right? Am I?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, good. I was like, it's not Martha, right?
She just asks that you swear a little less.
Oh, she asked
Oh,
that I
she
swear a little
doesn't
less?
like the F word.
Oh, I'm
Well,
sorry.
It's like the best
feel
word
like
ever.
I feel like a chastised teenager now. So the other crazy thing, you guys, is like this web of connections that our life lives, right? So we have a guest coming on next week who is also interweaved into this circle that Rikki doesn't actually know, but has worked at the same places, and there's so many overlaps. But how Jason knew Rikki, how I knew Rikki. Coolest thing is that Rikki's mom worked with my dad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. At
Really?
Ponderosa. Yeah, they worked together. They used to eat lunch together. Yeah. And I just like all these little things of like, if you ever think that you are like meaningless or life doesn't fucking mean any, sorry, Margaret, life doesn't mean anything. Like these are just profound ways of looking at the webs that our life weaves and why we are meant to be in each other's lives, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. And actually, fun fact, were we not boyfriend and girlfriend in grade 5? Like we talked on the phone after school.
I think we held hands once. I'm not too sure.
I don't think we kissed though. I wasn't kissing people back then.
Not yet. Still counts.
Oh my God, so funny. Okay, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. I gotta get back to work.
Yeah, get back to work, would you?
Yeah. Thanks, Rikki. And thanks to everyone who tuned in this week. We're back next week with your next favorite episode. Until then, I'm Jason.
I'm Jolene.
No swear words.